You've hit play on The Screen Companion, a show about making your viewing time count.
So here we are for a fantastic episode. Joining me is Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hey.
We're talking 80s vampire films, 1985's Fright Night, and 1987's The Lost Boys. Fright Night opens with horror fan Charlie Brewster suspecting that his new neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, is a vampire. When Jerry proves it and threatens Charlie's life, the teen enlists the aid of has-been horror movie actor Peter Vincent to stop Jerry from claiming any more victims, including Charlie's girlfriend, Amy. And in The Lost Boys, brothers Michael and Sam move to a California beach town with their mom, only to discover a crew of vampire biker punks hanging out every night at the boardwalk. When their leader, David, tries to turn Michael into one of them, Sam enlists the help of comic book geeks, the Frog Brothers, to save Michael's soul from the vampire curse. Sarah, you can't talk about seminal 80s movies like these without discussing the style. How would you characterize their visuals?
I have to say, where I really struggled with The Lost Boys was the hairstyles. It was like mullet fest, and it made the movie comical to me, and I had a hard time taking it seriously because of the hairstyles alone. I also noticed that a lot of the special effects in both movies were very of their time. The scene in The Lost Boys where they're hanging upside down and they pan to a picture of their claw-like feet, it looked like a plastic prosthetic, and I couldn't get past it.
Pretty sure they hung those boys upside down for real.
They probably did, but I was like, that is the most plasticky looking foot I've ever seen. And what I don't understand in either movie is why the vampires had to have the long nails.
Bela Lugosi, he's the original vampire, and I don't remember him having long nails.
No, but I don't recall even seeing that having the long nails. And even bats don't have like super long talons, so I was trying to make the connection there, and I really couldn't.
Besides it being unsettling, now that I think about it, there is a reference point for it. Count Orlok in Nosferatu, he had really long nails.
Oh, I've not seen it.
Yeah, it's a super old black and white German expressionist film.
That would not be my wheelhouse.
But between the visual styles of both movies, which one did you like more?
Overall, it had to have been Fright Night. I feel like it did a better job.
Agreed. The visuals on their own, I think Lost Boys had so much gloss to it.
Yes.
And so much
True.
of it takes place at night, and all those shots, especially on the boardwalk, they look beautiful. But in terms of serving the narrative, the more realistic domestic look of Fright Night works better.
Exactly. What I noticed in The Lost Boys is they would always show these scenes of the supposed vampire boys flying, but you never actually saw them take flight. It was all camera in a helicopter flying over the park or flying over somebody's house before they snuck in. I found that to be really disappointing.
Did it feel like one long MTV music video?
It did. Between the hairstyles, the clothing, there was so much focus on Kiefer Sutherland's character. You could tell, obviously, that he was the big star of the film.
The Screen Companion is available on multiple platforms, including Podbean, Amazon Music Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Tell us your review, vote for what we should cover next, or let certain guests know they're your favorite via thescreencompanion@gmail.com or by posting on the Screen Companion group on Facebook. Thanks to everyone in the States and abroad for listening. Further support the host by purchasing his novel, Traversal, The Weight of Worlds, available in both digital and print formats on Amazon.com.
Now, as surface level as The Lost Boys is, did you feel it dragged at any point?
Not so much dragging, but I felt like there were maybe scenes that were unnecessary and more there to serve the male gaze than they were to tell a part of the story. Especially everything that was going on with Star and Michael. That story was pointless as a part of the film and still could have told the story without it, but she was there to appease the male gaze of the film.
On the one hand, it sounds very hetero, but did you catch some gay undertones here?
No, but thinking about it right now in my head, I could maybe see it.
Well, famously, there's the sax man on the stage.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't for me, Sarah. That was for you.
Along with the sensual music they were trying to play throughout the film.
So I remember around the time of the first Twilight movie, I was at a dentist's office, and there were 3 or 4 women of all ages talking about the books and Robert Pattinson. I couldn't believe how into it they were, young or old. They were so excited. Sparkling vampires aside, do you find vampires as a concept to be super sexy?
No. So it's interesting that you bring up Twilight. I never saw Twilight. I had no desire to see it. I never read the books. I was a Harry Potter girl through and through. Nothing about vampires have ever seemed attractive to me. It's a man in a cape with some fangs.
And usually they're very metrosexual.
They are. I was going to say, usually they're either very metro or they're very masculine and very rugged and very, gruff. Those features can be attractive, but not when you mix it with a cape and some fangs.
I'm so happy we see eye to eye on this.
You don't find them attractive either?
No, and when they are sexy, it's universally sexy stuff, like some vampire chick has her boobs out. I mean, that's going to be hot no matter what.
I am surprised that there were no boob scenes in The Lost Boys.
Yeah, it's a very soft R.
I was a little surprised there, and even the gore itself, there wasn't anything that was over the top or anything that even really seemed like it had earned its rating.
A lot of quick edits. You barely see anything.
That's what I noticed as well. It just felt like it just jumped so quickly. Parts of it I found predictable. Within the first 15 minutes of the movie, 20 minutes of the movie, I had already decided who the head vampire was. And was correct, by the way.
It's not the most complicated movie. You figure its main audience was 80s teenagers.
Yes, it was.
Maybe they were more mature teens back then than teens now. What do you think?
They probably were a little more mature because past generations, you were expected to be mature at a very young age. Any videos you would see of typical families on TV of like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, everyone's always very well behaved. And now with cameras being in your hand at all times, people feel free to act out and act more immaturely.
Yeah, and without the internet back then, kids had to socialize a lot more, so I think that would help them ramp up their maturity too.
And I noticed even this being, quote, Hollywood movie, quote, just how different we looked, and I don't mean just like with the hairstyles, but I mean just how much more slimmer everybody was. And I don't mean that in like a negative comment on today's society as well. It's just interesting to me, like how we looked 30 years ago. The average human is not how they look today, even in Hollywood.
Which movie do you think was scarier?
I would say Fright Night.
So then in Fright Night, what was your favorite scary moment?
Towards the end, you got to have that great fight scene. just like how dark, and they really tried to give you like some jump scare moments with the vampire popping out or his brother. They focused more on that, and I appreciated that. I enjoy a jump scare.
I liked it early on when Charlie is on to Jerry and he doesn't know what to do. And then he comes home to his mom introducing the new guest, and it's Jerry.
Yes.
Charlie, could you come down here a minute, please? There's someone I'd like you to meet.
Yeah, Mom.
Charlie, this is our next-door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge.
Hello, Charlie. What's he doing here?
I invited him over for a drink.
What?
I invited him over. Why?
What's the matter, Charlie? Afraid I'd never come over without being invited first? You're right. You're quite right. Of course, now that I've been made welcome, I'll probably drop by quite a bit. In fact, anytime I feel like it.
I also appreciated the dark alleyway scene.
Yeah, very atmospheric.
It was just how the slow killer walk, where no matter how fast Evil was trying to run away from him, he just stayed right behind him at all times, and that was good.
It gave me Terminator vibes.
It did. Even Halloween vibes.
I'm going to say both movies play with gay subtext.
Yes.
But between the two, which one do you think made the story more interesting the way they played with it?
Probably Fright Night.
And there are two big examples fans usually point to. Jerry and they never really say what Billy Cole is. Maybe he's a ghoul. He's some kind of helper. The way they shoot those two, they could either be really good friends or really, really good friends.
Right.
And then Evil Ed, his friendship with Charlie, and then you mentioned that moment in the alley between Evil and Jerry. There, you're kind of like, I wonder what Evil Ed's sexuality is.
It made me wonder, too, why Jerry was always attacking women. Yes, obviously he attacked in the alleyway, but all the scenes they show in the beginning of the movie are women.
I never really thought about that. And the way he turns evil, it seems a little bit more sympathetic.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, too. If he hates women, that would explain why he's always trying to attack them and turn them into his legion of vampiresses.
Which relationship triangle did you like more? David, Michael, and Star? Or Charlie, Jerry, and Amy?
I found Charlie, Jerry, and Amy to be a little creepy because I was like, how old is Jerry supposed to be, and aren't these kids in high school? So that was
Definitely,
a little...
Definitely there's the older guy.
Yes. So in that regard, I guess I would have to say Michael, Star, and, oh my gosh, I just blanked on his name.
David Kiefer Sutherland.
Thank you. David. And that's what I wanted to say. I was like, Kiefer, no, David. I would say Michael, Star, and David.
They're bloodsuckers. Do you really expect appropriate relationships?
That's very valid. That's that's a valid point. But I feel like there were more good blood scenes in Fright Night, for sure.
I got sucked into Charlie's drama with Amy immediately because they set him up perfectly in the first 5 minutes.
They really did.
Charlie's frustrated they haven't done the deed yet. Amy feels pressured into doing it. The actress, Amanda Bearse, she was 26, I believe, when they filmed it. But the scenario at the beginning was enough that it made me feel like she was playing the role pretty well, you know?
She did a pretty good job. I found it very interesting, though, that she was, oh, let's wait, no, and then suddenly she was so hot to, I died a little when she called it making love, but she was suddenly so hot to do that, and then the next thing you know, she ends up in Jerry's arms.
But when Amy wants to give herself to Charlie, I don't think she's doing it because she really wants to do it. I think she's worried about losing him.
Oh, 100%. Women feel that pressure, especially young women.
But contrast that against Michael and Star, where their relationship comes down to, I locked eyes with her at a concert.
Pretty much they were naked within the first 20 minutes of the movie with their sex scenes.
The director, Joel Schumacher, was a gay man, and I feel like that comes out, pun intended again, in that scene where they're having relations. The way that's cut, it's these shots fading into one another, but there's no nudity. There's really no sex.
He was more exposed than she was, which typically is the opposite. Usually your boobs are out, your bottom half is exposed, but in this sense, he was more exposed. I didn't know the director was gay, and that makes sense.
I'm perfectly all right with it, but since they didn't give me boobies and that scene was meant for you, did it work for you?
No, because it just felt orchestrated and fake and was in the storyline just simply for, like, the male attention. And I realized that Michael was the one who was shirtless, but you have this beautiful woman that, oh, I just locked eyes with her at a concert and now we're
They never say why Michael is into Star besides the physical. He likes her so much that he'll fight vampires for her, considering they've known each other for like less than a week.
It's true. He pretty much sacrificed himself to try to save her and almost sacrificed his family, but also to save himself.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like Fright Night engaged you more. Why do you think that is?
The story was better overall. It moved quicker. There was more action to it. But I did have a couple questions towards the end of the film. I thought this movie was about vampires, but they're also werewolves.
An aspect of some vampire lore that they can turn into creatures of the night, bats, wolves.
Because when Evil turned into a wolf, I was like, but wait a second, is there a full moon? Are we werewolves? And then even when they were like showing him turning back into a human, it was more wolf-like, more dog-like, and I didn't really get the vampire vibes from him.
And whenever they have scenes like that, I always think in the 10 seconds it took you to transform, you probably could have killed the guy by now.
Right.
It's like, no, wait, just stay there. Don't run away. Give me 20 seconds. I'm going to turn into a wolf.
Yes. And when Jerry morphed into a bat, that was the most ridiculous-looking bat I'd ever seen in my life. I almost laughed out loud.
There definitely is a purposeful humor in both movies. Which movie do you think did the comedy better?
I'm going to go with Fright Night. The comedy of how bad some of it was good.
Since I'm not a huge horror guy, I liked that it had some gross-out moments in Fright Night. But since it's playing with the humor, that's the part of it I'm going to like more, so I like that balance.
I enjoyed that there was more like visuals when people were being attacked. You actually saw Jerry attack his victims for the most part. And his character as a vampire overall, I just felt like was better done than in The Lost Boys. Now,
I was so excited to get you for this episode to bring that female perspective especially. Because I'm not super comfortable answering it, let me ask you, who do you think is the sexiest, Michael, David, or Jerry?
I'm going to have to go with Jerry just because he had that brood about him where he seemed like more of the darker, gruff vampire, whereas like Michael was just, oh, I'm so in love. I have to save this girl that I've known for 5 minutes. And Jerry really just had the look and the feel and the whole I'm a sexy vampire vibe.
And how much of that would you say is due to Chris Sarandon playing Jerry that compared to The Lost Boys, which really feels like Goonies with vampires?
It really did. That is a good analogy.
Well, actually, it started as a script with much younger characters, and then they cast older actors.
To play teenagers? That was a 30-year-old playing a 16-year-old, always convincing.
But Chris Sarandon, being an older actor, was that part of why you found him more attractive?
I think so, because I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm not going to look at an 18-year-old and be like, oh, he's so good-looking. That feels weird to me. So that probably plays a part as well, my maturing brain, finding the mature gentleman more attractive.
Oh, but we're still teens at heart. Or at least I am. I haven't really moved on from that phase.
I'm 21 in my brain, but my body is not.
So it's safe to say at some point during Fright Night, you felt a little twitch in your nethers for Jerry?
I wouldn't go that far, but if I had to choose, he's going to be the choice.
When I was 8 or 9, The Lost Boys holds a special place in my heart because it's the first R-rated movie I saw, and at the time, it scared the hell out of me in its fuzzy VHS quality. I can't believe I was afraid of this movie, ever.
It's interesting, right? Because one of the movies I was most afraid of when I was a kid was the TV version of Stephen King's It, the one with Tim Curry as Pennywise the clown. I went back and watched it a few years ago with Stacy before they did the reboots, and why was I scared of this?
Tim Curry still gives a great performance, but no, it's not that scary.
No, but as a kid, you're like, oh, there's going to be a clown in every sewer drain. You know, if you're a child, how this film could be scary, especially if it's new for its time. The special effects and everything were the best at the time, or of normal quality at the time, how you could find this scary.
Kids always add their imagination to what they're watching. That helps.
Yeah. And I'm sure it helped, too, that there were boobs for you to see on that one.
In Fright Night there was, but I don't remember boobs out in Lost Boys.
No, that's true. Fright Night had the boobs.
Just another reason I didn't like it as much. Did you notice how both movies focused on single mother households?
Yes. And there's always
Why do you think that is?
That's, I feel like, a standard for horror movies. It's usually a single mother. Yes, don't get me wrong, like in certain films like Conjuring and other supernatural horror films, it's usually more about families. But when you think about like murder slasher films as a whole, it's more usually single mothers. And I find that interesting as well. Maybe they are seen as more vulnerable, therefore easier to attack.
Yeah, there's that aspect to it. Also, if we look at vampires as an allegory for puberty, suddenly you're aware of bodily fluids. Burgeoning sexual feelings can come off as absolutely lethal. So if that's the case, and vampires are a stand-in for that boy that wants to get with your daughter, fathers are instantly suspicious in a way that mothers aren't.
That's true.
If there are dads in these movies, he's like, you think there's a vampire next door? Whether or not I believe you, there's no way I'm inviting that person to this house. Both movies, the moms invite the guys over that they probably shouldn't.
They're single, lonely women who are, again, I say, vulnerable, and so they're willing to invite these strange men into their homes and put their children at risk.
It was a more innocent time in the 80s. Most moms now with the internet, they probably Google search them.
They do. Reverse image search, do all of it.
Were there any small details in either movie that really caught your eye?
I appreciated in Fright Night that they really focused, really in both movies, but particularly in Fright Night, that they really focused the traditional items that kill vampires. They really focused on it. In Lost Boys, they did the holy water garlic bath. And then in Fright Night, they were really focused on the crucifix, the holy water, and driving a stake through their heart. I appreciated that they both really stuck true to that, and they were really focused on no matter what was killing them, it was going to be one of those items or a combination of all of them.
That's something, though, about vampires. A lot of the movies don't quite hit the spot for me in that I'm never quite sure what the rules are. And in both movies, they play with vampire conventions. You see them use it, and then you go, oh, okay, I guess that's the kind of vampire they are.
Right. That's a good way to look at it, too.
In Fright Night, I noticed how much fog is billowing from Jerry's house when Charlie and Peter Vincent go there for the final showdown.
It just kept getting foggier and foggier throughout the movie. It was like any time Jerry was about to appear, it was always very foggy. In the alley scene, when he goes after evil, it's very, very foggy. And then it's almost like the more evil of a vampire he becomes, the foggier it gets. The more he kills, the foggier it gets.
That house looked like it was made of dry ice. If I lived on that block and saw that smoke pouring out like a gateway to hell, I'd turn around and cut my walk short.
Not go inside and see what's going on.
Who do you think was the best character in The Lost Boys?
I like the Frog Brothers. They brought the history of the vampires with them and the side characters, but they're the ones who really knew everything about vampires. And I also love the grandpa.
Yeah, I loved his taxidermy. And how he keeps putting them in his grandson's room.
And his car that he drove off to when he went to go see the widow on the night of the big fight scene, and he honked the horn, and it was La Cucaracha, there we go. And the thing was like, it was like a 1935 little Ford something or other. He was quite a character.
While I ultimately think the teen tone held them back from getting edgier in The Lost Boys, I liked Sam's reaction to stuff. His scenes with his mom, the Frog Brothers, his older brother. I smiled when he discovered Michael was turning into a vampire. And as he runs up the stairs, he scolds, "Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy." Like he caught his brother shoplifting instead of having a thirst for human blood. He
was very teenager, almost childlike in some of his scenes.
Nanook.
What about Nanook? What'd you do to my dog, you asshole?
Nothing. I didn't hurt him. He bit me. This is my blood.
Why'd he bite you, Mike? Huh? What'd you do to him?
He was protecting you.
Look at your reflection in the mirror. You're a creature of the night, Michael. Just like out of a comic book. You're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
Sammy, wait. Sam!
Stay back!
Just
Stay
wait
back.
and let me talk. Wait a minute! Sam!
Get away from me, Mike!
You did the right thing by calling us. Does your brother sleep a lot?
Yeah, all day.
Does the sunlight freak him out?
He wears sunglasses in the house.
Bad breath, long fingernails.
Yeah, his fingernails are all a bit longer. He always had bad breath, though.
He's a vampire, all right.
All right, here's what you do. Get yourself a good sharp stake and drive it right through his heart.
I can't do that. He's my brother.
Okay, we'll come over and do it for you.
Whatever criticisms we have, both movies were very consistent with their tones.
For the movies being an 80s horror movie, which is usually more of a campy sort of horror, both directors did a really good job with the films.
So in the taxonomy of horror movie monsters, what does or doesn't work for you compared to a mummy or zombies when we're talking vampires?
I don't find vampires to be frightening. Obviously, they can kill you. If one was coming down my hallway, I wouldn't go give it a hug. But it's not something that truly, the monster aspect of horror doesn't really frighten me.
You can't think of any vampires in movies that really freaked you out? Nothing?
No, maybe just the way some of them looked in like the older black and white horror movies. because of how their makeup was, but no.
Well, I think we also need to note that you have a very strong stomach for horror movies. It practically runs through your veins.
That is true.
So to scare you, that's got to be like 5% of horror movies at this point.
I think the last horror movie I saw that I really struggled to finish was The Terrifier 2.
I have heard that that has some gory moments.
There were moments that I had to pause it, not out of like fear, but just because it was so grotesque.
Well, there's a positive review for The Terrifier 2 for our horror fans.
Yes.
So moving on to our final segment, TLDL, too long, didn't listen. I'm going to ask you some questions. Give me some quick responses. Which movie is a better Halloween choice?
Lost Boys.
Which movie's portrayal of vampires was better?
Fright Night.
What was a better plot device? Learning about vampires through comics or a washed-up horror host?
Washed-up horror host.
Which movie had less plot holes?
Fright Night.
Which movie was sexier?
Fright Night.
Which supporting cast did you like more? The Frog Brothers, Evil Ed, or Nanook the dog?
You threw a dog in there. Frog Brothers.
Yeah. I knew that tripped you up. Do you think your dog would defend you like that?
I don't know.
She'd go up to the vampire and ask for pets.
She would. She'd roll over and be like, please rub my belly.
You can kill Sarah as long as you promise to come back and rub me.
As long as you give me belly rubs.
So what was a better set? The Sunken Vampire Hotel and the Lost Boys, or Jerry's house in Fright Night?
Jerry's house.
The scene where Amy and Jerry dance, or Michael hanging under the train tracks with the gang?
Michael hanging under the train tracks.
Didn't it have like a real dreamlike quality to it?
Yeah, it did. I felt that Amy and Jerry's dancing scene was very unnecessary.
80s?
80s and unnecessary.
The scene where Michael and Star get it on, or Jerry biting Amy?
Jerry biting Amy.
And finally, which movie do you think had the better end gag?
I'm going to have to go with The Lost Boys.
It's a fun button, but the moment you think about it, what a jerk. He didn't let on to his family at all that there were vampires in town. I guess they probably wouldn't have believed him, but he could have taken some measure, you know?
It was totally unnecessary. He had to save his zingy one-liner for the end.